Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another logic video. Today I will be demonstrating how to create a dodge mechanic, similar to that used in the Legend of Zelda series. To start with, I have created a camera rig, which is a simple block, a simple sculpt, which I have put inside the inside a group with the character, but it's not really necessary to have it inside the group, except for saving purposes, like if you want to, save a version like this. But it's just a simple piece of material, invisible, non-collidable. I've also reduced the detail using the adjust detail setting in the tools. I've put a microchip on the surface with 3 important gizmos. I might as well call this something. Camera adjust. But I will explain how it all works. First, there is a teleporter labeled cam mount. And if we scope into our puppet here with L1 and X, we can open up the logic. And here we have our tag, which is called cam mount. So the teleporter will follow this tag at exactly this position. Next, we have a look at rotator, which you can find in the gadgets, specifically movers and output. And it's set to 180 rotation speed and 100% rotation strength and overall dampening. I've slightly lowered the Y strength to 44% so that it doesn't aim up and down very quickly, because that kind of causes disorientation. I've also made the max distance that it can detect a tag quite large, although you might not want to do this in actual, in actual gameplay. It's probably not a good idea to make it so large because you'll be locking onto things way off in the distance. You should probably have it mighty close to the player, but for testing purposes, we've made it large. And I've taken an output from it, which is the found target output. You'll see it right here, but you can just grab with X and take a wire from it. And I've connected it to this camera. Cameras are inside cameras and lighting, which is somewhat self-explanatory. The camera is set to smooth transition. 0.3 seconds, I suppose. This will mean that when you lock onto an enemy, it has a nice smooth transition. You can also position the camera. I'm going to go ahead and scope outside the player so that we can get a good view of what we're dealing with here. You can position the camera by pressing L1 and X to scope in. And it's something that you might want to test. I'll go ahead and press play. This will give you an idea of where your, position is. Once you've found the correct position, you can press exit, or alternatively, you can press L1 and circle, and the camera will remain at that position. So once we found a target, the camera will activate. Very simple. I've also put in a little trigger zone that detects anything labeled scenery. Labeled. Don't forget to set it to label. Invisible or, non-collidable. Probably not necessary, but just in case. And basically what this does is this little square behind you activates a keyframe, which you can find in here. A keyframe with 0.8 slow power up and 0.5 slow power down. And all it does is readjust the camera so that it moves closer to the player. That way you won't have the camera being obscured by rocks or glitching through walls. I just thought I'd cover that real quick. Next, we took the found target output and connected it to a switch. Switches can be found in the Sensors and Input tab. I've also connected it to an action recorder, set to keyframe mode with a single frame, but we'll talk about what that does later. Let's go over here and see that the switch's wire goes into the puppet's logic, where it connects to a look-at rotator, also labeled target. So the look-at rotator we put in here earlier affects the camera's targeting. This one is necessary so that the player will face the same direction as the camera. And unlike the other look-at rotator, this one is set to an extremely high rotation speed. And it has no need for Y strength being turned down, although you could turn it to 0 if you wanted to, because we're not going to need it. It doesn't affect the puppet anyway. So as soon as the camera sees something, activate camera and also activate the look-at rotator on the player so they lock to the target. Next, let's go into our logic, and if we go to jump animations, right here, L1 and X to open up the chip. Ugh, confusing. Pull this forward with R2. Inside our jump animations, I've created 3 jump keyframes, which are already naturally in most puppets. If you stamp out a puppet and you go here, you'll see that most of these are already in the puppet. I've made a few custom ones, oops, inside the zone, or I should say inside the group. And I've made this little thing so that if I want to, I could shut them off, but it's not really necessary for this particular tutorial. That's more just something else I put on the side. I've also hooked up the landing impact to a timeline set to play once. And on this timeline, I've put a little keyframe of you hitting the floor to make it look like you're impacting. Oh, you died. Not sure why you died. That was interesting. But, yeah, this keyframe makes you hit the floor. It turns off the puppet interface, meaning that you briefly won't be able to move while this thing's active. It's set to 0.1 slow power up and 0.2 slow power down. And it just acts as a little buffer for when you hit the floor. That way you won't be sliding around everywhere and, you know, zipping about in an unrealistic fashion. Next is the most complicated part, which is a little gadget I actually have borrowed from another dreamer called the Smart Joystick Input Splitter. I am going to go into how it works a little bit, but if you go to search Smart Joystick, you'll find the one that I used, which is this particular one by Nijim 1992. Which I kind of, you know, I borrowed this particular piece of logic. I normally like to use my own logic, but sometimes I borrow stuff. MM stuff in particular I tend to borrow a lot. And the reason why is because if it's already mapped out, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Generally what I look for, though, is logic that's nice and simple. And I think this is probably the simplest way to achieve what I'm trying to do, which is, I wouldn't really call it smart joystick input. What I would call it is absolute input, because there's this thing that's really annoying with the joystick, be it left stick local or left stick, you know, not local. But there's this thing that's really annoying where if you press diagonally, it counts as right or left or forward, and you know, it's a really annoying, and I don't like it. But this thing basically eliminates that problem. It creates an absolute input. And I've turned off the microchip that it's contained in. Like I've just opened it up with L1 and square and tapped X on this to turn it off. But basically this little keyframe right here turns it on so that when we're locked on, this logic is active. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp out this keyframe real quick so that we can actually get a look at what's going on in here. First we have the input, which is just a simple node. I've gone over to the controller sensor and I've attached the left stick local output to this input. Next, it's connected to a splitter. And what a splitter does is it basically splits the inputs for a joystick. X is right and left, Y is up and down. And of course, it's connected to two other splitters so that we can get a positive and a negative for right and left. Right being positive, left being negative, or vice versa. Same with Y. Up being positive, down being negative, or vice versa. It could be up is negative and down is positive. You have to test it a little bit sometimes because I forget myself. Next, the positive and negative inputs are hooked up to a signal manipulator, which is set to custom remapper, ease in, and no edge mode. I don't really understand these things very well, but you might have to copy this if you don't understand them like I do. I don't know what it is about signal manipulators, but they've always kind of confounded me. I don't really know what they do, but they're really handy. And you connect both of those to a combiner. I don't really know if there's any difference between the two of them. They seem to be the same. But you connect them to positive and negative on the combiner. And then you connect the combiner to another one. Another signal manipulator, which, by the way, you can find in Logic and Processing. Now this one is set to custom remap, and it certainly is that, whatever that is. It has no shaping this time. And then it's connected to two calculators, which I actually changed the original logic, because the original Smart Joystick uses multiplication. I get the feeling it was meant for a different subject than I'm using it for currently. I've changed it so that it's actually using the outputs, the negative and positive output, to achieve a certain effect or output into these nodes or whatever. But basically, for the positive one, you're going to want a calculator that's set to greater than 0. And for the negative one, you're going to want an output that is less than 0. And don't forget to connect them to the A inputs, of course. And it's pretty much the same for Y as it is with X. I've also got this, which I don't actually need anymore. That was for the testing phase. And I've got these nodes, which connect to these nodes. And they're going to act as a little guide to tell us exactly what input we're getting. So this is the back input, this is the forward input, this is the right input, this is the left input. And as you can see, they're properly connected. It may take some testing to get the right input that you want. It's pretty easy. By the way, a good way to test inputs, if you're interested, is just go to the controller sensor and set the controller to wireless. You'll be able to test how all of these things work in real time in edit mode. Just thought I'd mention that. It's pretty handy. Anyway, that aside, we're going to move on to our next piece of logic. We're going to want to stamp out a node, and we're going to connect a NOT gate to the power of that node, which if you press L1 and square, you can easily open it up, connect a wire with X, like thus. And we're going to connect the node to a timeline set to play once, 200% playback speed. And you probably are familiar with this. We do this a lot around here. I've also put a switch on the timeline, which I've hooked up to the NOT gate to prevent premature playback. Another thing I've done is made it so that there's a switch inside this microchip connected to the NOT gate. And the reason why I've done this is when you're not locked on, I want to shut off the ability to dodge, leap, dodge and jump around, because I don't want you normally navigating the level and doing weird flips and everything. So basically, when this is off, so is your ability to jump around. And I'll talk about how you trigger your little dodges. I use the puppet interface inside here. There's actually a output if you press L1 and square. Go in here, and you'll see the jumped output. If you connect the jump output here, it'll automatically activate this timeline when you jump. Pretty handy. And now we're going to get into how you dodge in different directions. Basically, I've got 4 movers, which you can find in movers and output. Somewhat self-explanatory again. It's just a basic mover. Set to local space and 50% overall dampening. We don't want it being too floaty, which dampening tends to do, so keep it at 50%. And 93% movement strength. The speed is 8.0. I believe forward is slightly faster at 9.0, and right and left are actually really fast at 12.0, so I made them a little bit different, but that's just my own personal preference. You could customize them to your heart's content, but you'll notice these little wires that are leading into them, and they're all on a microchip on the timeline, so when this is active, these will be active. At least the ones that have power running into them. And the power is actually coming straight from these nodes that we saw earlier. The input from the left local stick runs straight into these, so it'll be active during this brief window when you're leaping. And this is what's going to create our direction. The left one, of course, goes left. If you want to change the direction, it's actually really easy to do with the grid snap option, which you can find in guides. Just grab R2 and you can shift this thing all over the place, any direction you want. But I've created one for left, right, forward, and backward. And I've connected the appropriate nodes, which I labeled handily. You might have to test it out, though, before you figure out which is which. I often get confused about these things, so it's not really that shameful to test them. Anyway, what's up next? Oh yes, I've also got these little movers at the end you might see here for when the microchip is done playing. And all they do is kind of make sure that you make a nice landing. First, I've got this one at 8.0, 50% dampening strength, and 100% movement strength. I've also turned off local space and set it so that it points you downward. And this will basically make sure that after a leap, you go down. You hit the ground and you reach, your natural stance. Next, I've got this other mover, and it's essentially the same. The only difference is it's set to 0.0 movement speed, and the reason why this is I want you to reach an instant stop once you've hit the ground. I don't want you sliding around or having any weird glitches like that. I've also got this little switch, which doesn't seem to go anywhere. Never mind that. And I've got an action recorder. Set to keyframe mode, and it's a single frame as usual. And all it does is shut off your ability to attack while dodging and shut off your poses. Anyway, that's pretty much everything on how to create this, so I'm going to go ahead and test it in action. Oh, and don't forget to delete this. This will do the activation process just fine. So once we have a target, which, by the way, I should mention that this creature over here has a tag on it labeled target. So this will react, send out an output, and will begin the whole process. Now let's take a look. Oh, something else I should do. Go back here and set it to possessable. Forgot to do that. Alright, so dodge forward. We're pressing forward on the stick to make it do this. Backward. Left. Right. And we're lucky we've got that camera gizmo, otherwise that rock would be playing havoc with the camera. Simple. And there you go, that's how to make a dodge. Or at least a Zelda style dodge. Not really sure what to call it. Directional dodge, maybe? It's a bit different from other styles like the FromSoft dodge. Or dodge roll, I guess you'd call it. Thanks for watching! Hopefully this was an insightful video or otherwise enjoyable. If it was, then go ahead and subscribe if you can, and hit the bell to keep up with our videos. Also, subscribed or not, give a like. If you have any questions or statements, leave a comment. We try to answer all comments. If you like what we do here and want to help out, consider becoming a channel member. Alternatively, you can check out the link in the description to support us through Patreon. Until next time, take it easy. That's all for now.